Hi, I'm iKia, and for today's video, I'm going to ramble on for a bit about me, actually, as we're going to do a little bit of an AMA Q&A kind of thing, as it is currently at the date of recording my birthday on the 10th, and it is what I would consider the anniversary of the channel on the 11th, which was my first major release on the YouTube channel, which was the masterclass for fire eclipses. And we'll go a little bit into some of the questions as I reached out to some people to provide me some questions. Also openly made a YouTube post of asking for some questions. So we'll go through that. We'll have a little bit of story time and, go over a lot of things. Yeah, let's hop right in. And we'll start off with one of the ones from a community post, and I'll answer this one just so we can go a little bit into story time as we'll go over kind of me. And they ask, I've wondered, is it iKia, as in one word, or is it like I, Kia? And they go further as, I wouldn't go as far to ask about your real name, but I'm curious about the origins of the online one. So actually, I will say that Kia is my name, and that is... I'll give away as well that isn't my full name. It is a shortening of something else. I won't say what because that might make it a little bit too easy. But and the iKia came from kind of as somebody as well commented on that, clearly from iKia, the furniture store. That spelling. It was kind of a joke on that, together with back when I made the name. Of course, iPads and iPhones and stuff from Mac were pretty popular. Although I was always a Windows person, but I kind of made iKias of like in the style of the logo of the store, and also of like with a Mac logo behind it and stuff. And yeah, it's basically indeed iKia, I'm here to, do things and stuffs. And yeah, just kind of stuck. I used to have a lot of other online names, and this one I kind of liked and kind of stuck around. It was also unique enough that it resonated with people. Although, of course, now I'm running into the problem that it's very much unsearchable. Nobody can really search for me on YouTube's without adding in Division 2 and find me. If you just search my name, iKia, YouTube will definitely autocorrect it. Rightly so, of course, as well as most people will be looking for the bigger iKia. But yeah, that's where it comes from. And we'll also go into then as well the second question here, which is, what is your first language? And I'll use that as well as a springboard to kind of give the brief introduction to my life story, which is my very first language is Farsi, which is Persian, which is where I was born. I was born in Tehran in Iran, and as a very young age, I came over to the Netherlands together with my mother, as my parents were political dissidents, basically. And yeah, that is how I ended up in the Netherlands. And nowadays, I'm a national, a Dutch national, and I'm very much a Dutchie. I can speak, for instance, Farsi, but I actually speak it so little that I can kind of speak it at the level of a child. So I've kind of lost my first language. But luckily, my second and third language being Dutch and English, I'm pretty proficient at, I would say. But that's also kind of the where the accent comes from. As while that wasn't a question asked, I'll put that in as it's a frequently asked question: is what is your accent, or where does it come from? It is basically a mishmash of me having been brought up with Farsi as my primary language, and then being molded into Dutch and English, and hanging around Americans way too much online, and picking up their accents up a little bit. So it is an all-round mishmash of the world, which kind of is what I am as well, as I very much am. Yeah, currently very much a Dutchie, but I because of streaming and videos and stuff, I speak more English than Dutch nowadays. Also with my profession, yeah, that's a brief glimpse into my past. Let's move on to the next questions. And let's go to some very important questions as I have been asked here. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Now, of course, the question here relies on missing information. And that is it an African or a European swallow? Without knowing that, I am unwilling to answer. That is my legal answer. But what we really need to consider, of course, is that African and European swallows have different mod slots. And of course, one of them has 21 DTH, the other has 31 crit chance, one being an AR, one being an SMG, of course. So yeah, you can't really compare them together. And yeah, because of that, you have to really consider as well, there are different mod slots, there are different categories. You can, I definitely like using African swallows more in strikers, where European swallows fit really well in high-end builds. You can even, of course, take African swallows into scale builds, whereas tank builds really prefer European swallows. And yeah, sometimes, of course, American swallows even show up and just do their thing. And of course, what their airspeed velocity is depends on how far the render distance of the game is, which in Division is only 100 meters. So yeah, it's at most 100 meters per second, which is pretty fast. So that's hope that answers your question. And yeah, you have to really look at swallows on builds. So kind of depends on which build you're asking for. And after that important question, of course, we have to answer a few more. We'll go after some of them, of course, being about the current patch and state of the game. As for instance, here as well as asked about what are the new armpatch blueprints, and if I have some details about them. I don't believe anybody really does. They haven't really talked about it, but I would expect that maybe in the future they'll give us some ways of getting arm patches from crafting. That would be kind of cool. I would actually still like them to be more from commendations, mostly, as that's where arm patches mostly come from. But yeah, we basically don't know. So a bad answer, but the best I can give you. Do you think they should add a third talent onto knee pads with some of the lesser used backpacks and chest skills? So it does quite often come up, putting more talents onto other pieces of gear. And one of the things that I've actually put forward quite often is to maybe move stuff that is a little bit more not damage related, basically, move them to a different slot. I would say masks is the obvious slot for them, as that is the other piece with a mod slot as well in there. And then maybe move some talents across to it. So things like efficient maybe, or trauma, that gets used a lot less in PvE, or even maybe braced, but all of them in a much diminished form. So not in the stats that they have now, but for instance, braced maybe as a 20%, or maybe entrench or something like that. Having stats, talents there that we usually don't pick, but putting all of the utility ones basically there, making it the utility slot, and having us not be able to put a damage talent there, so it doesn't compete with damage talents, and having it be random talents. I would think that would be a really good balancing thing. But also you're adding in complexity at that point, because of course in the past we used to have talents on every slot, on every gear piece in Gear 1.0, and that did get a little bit confusing for people. We'll move on to, will you make a video about AKs? I mean, I can if you want to, but you won't like it. Although actually AKs are doing pretty well for themselves. But yeah, we can make a video about the compilation of the AK jumping around and missing its target, but I don't think that's what you are after there. As that person asking really love their AKs, but I don't dislike them either. They're pretty good, especially now with the new patch. And we'll move on to what got you into gathering the data and weapons and gear and compiling spreadsheets and calculations in Division 2. So this kind of started for me actually in a different game, which was a long time ago, although not as in depth as I'm doing nowadays. And that was a really old game, which my PFP was also based on. And in that game, it was already weapon stats and such that really mattered. And I started compiling what the weapon bases and such were. Once moving into other games, especially MMOs, WoW, EVE, and such stuff like that, I started doing that a little bit more. And I found that I had kind of a knack for just going through everything and trying to figure out how stuff works. And for me, it kind of comes a little bit natural. It's also kind of what my profession is based on. We'll go into what that is in a little bit. But trying to figure that kind of stuff out, I quite enjoyed it. And I kept running into people going, oh, okay, that's really actually handy. If you could keep doing that to everything. And then, we can use the data that you put forward. And I usually enjoy, actually, I'm perfectly happy to just sit there and go through a lot of different stats and try to find what each one of them is, and also mechanically how some talents and such work. So I always had a knack for it, and that, as with most things, when you have a knack for it, you just keep being pushed into it as well by peer pressure. And also I kind of as well myself just push into it. And then especially in Division, for instance, my burst and sustain tables, the main spreadsheets didn't have the answers in the way that I wanted them, which is the way that I'm presenting them, with burst and sustain and damage per mag and fast hands sorted by like the things that matter for them. And that's why I started compiling those. I just needed my own data sets. Kind of the same actually with the build collection. The build collection started out as a collection of me just trying to keep like track of which builds still needed what pieces, because especially in the past, optimization was a lot more expensive. So I started making it a little bit before even optimization came into the game. So if I had a drop, and I of course had 4 characters even at that point, if I had a drop and I wanted to know like, is this better than the one I have on like that character over there? I had the build pictures for that. And then I started to share the build pictures to people when they were asking like, oh, how do you put together your negotiator build, or this build? And they got more and more popular that way. And eventually I just took the plunge and went all in on it and got all of my builds on there through a long time. And now I'm just keeping and maintaining it. Because while it is a big thing, if I had to have done it in one go, same with the burst and sustain tables. I, for instance, first started only with ARs in there and started to expand. Same with the build collection. I started with a few builds that I cared about or still needed the stats for, and then eventually just, spread out, and here we are. So, and I've always been interested in damage calculations and such, and trying to figure them out and kind of understanding them. Also in other games. So, all the way back from Phantasy Star Online, as actually I didn't say the name back there. I now realize I was like, did I say the name? But yeah, Phantasy Star Online 2. That is where my PFP is from. It's a Rakast from that game. And from all the way back there. And actually, Phantasy Star Online is definitely a game I'm going to make a video about at some point, as it was, I think, actually the proto Division. I wonder if actually they took some inspiration for it, but we'll go into that someday in the future. Let's move on to the next questions. And for the next one, we're going to answer a stream-related question. What is an average response time to chat messages on stream? And can we get a spreadsheet for that? Well, I haven't prepared you a spreadsheet. I'll say that Toasty's answer, as I will call him out, the one person I'll call out there, of 2 to 5 business days. I was about to say 3 to 5 business days. 3 to 5 business days is likely more correct. But yeah, I'm always, of course, a little bit, sometimes too focused on the game and then not answering chat, as a lot of people know. Yeah, we're gonna definitely turn that into a spreadsheet. We're gonna get top men on that, top men that will put those spreadsheets together and go and figure out how long my average is. But yeah, I'll try to be better. It's fine. We'll continue on with this question, and one that I've also kind of always been bothered by in different ways, but multiplicative or additive bonuses. Is there a way to tell which is which, or do I have to test it all myself or watch a video from a Division YouTuber, which to be honest is a fail. It should be clear from in-game info what is what. So in the game, there's a lot of misnaming. One thing that already is already extra confusing is that a lot of players will use the term multiplicative, for instance, as well for DTOC or DTA or stuff like that, which aren't multiplicative. Usually when we talk about additive or multiplicative, we're talking about the stat to itself. That is usually how most games talk about it. All MMOs kind of talk about it in this way of if it's multiplicative to itself, a stat, or if it's additive to itself. And then usually all the things that are additive to themselves are multiplicative to the rest, because that's kind of how the calculation goes. Because a lot of people, of course, in Division talk about damage to targets out of cover, DTOC being multiplicative, which by the rules of that, how we define that, it isn't. It is additive to itself and then multiplicative to others. So it isn't its defining factor that it is multiplicative, because the step that is multiplicative, where it's multiplicative to others, it's very much that's the same as like weapon damage, which doesn't differentiate it in that way. So in the game itself, it does do a decent enough job with a lot of the talents, because while we jam on the talents that are wrong, especially a lot of the newer things that have been added, have been misworded, they're making an attempt to fix that. So usually when the game is talking about an amp, it's definitely multiplicative. If it is not talking about an amp, which that's where the issues come in, as they label a lot of things weapon damage, and weapon damage would normally be additive to weapon damage itself, or total weapon damage being additive to total weapon damage. They misname stuff and it becomes amps, as for instance the new talents. So one way of kind of knowing it is, I'll link that as well actually in here below for those that actually kind of want to know as well, is the Discord spreadsheet has taken to keeping track of all of the talents and listing them, which is the spreadsheet that you quite often see in the official Discord, maintained by Azerman currently. And that one is up to date with on the talents, showing if it is what the talent does, basically. So I'll link that down below, and that's kind of and yeah, it would be nice if the game we could if they labeled everything correctly as weapon damage or total weapon damage or an amp, so that we could know from in the game. But yeah, they from the game, there's too many mistakes to arguably say it. You can always, of course, test it yourself, which is kind of my solution to it, but that's also not acceptable for everyone, of course. We'll go on here to what is your most enjoyable off-meta build that gives you CC or insane armor or a weapon talent that lets you clear content without it being straight DPS. So your most fun build, in quotation marks. I know fun is subjective, they say. This kind of, yeah. The thing is, depends on your definition of meta, because yeah, if you going through that, of course, that gives you CC. Well, Fire Eclipse. I'm very much a Fire Eclipse main, I would almost say. So I very much enjoy that, especially in heroic content. That's kind of what I run. Or insane armor, as they say. Well, Heartbreaker Tech Tank. I very much enjoy that for solo play. But would you consider those builds off meta? I would actually consider them meta, because for me, Fire Eclipse is the meta for a group play where you take 3 hard-hitting builds, usually strikers, of course, that and one Fire Eclipse, and you use that for missions, for general missions. That is in my experience, a lot faster than going 4 strikers, for instance. 3 strikers and a fire eclipse, I usually find does it better. Same, for instance, for Tech Tank, I do think they are the meta for solo play. Together with Hunter's Fury, I would put them like for myself side by side, although, of course, I know a lot of people kind of disagree with, having any blues. I'm not of that mind, so. And yeah, for instance, as well, or weapon talent, I very much enjoy actually Pestilence. There's a reason I always had a Pestilence build in the build collection. It is a minor way of just playing differently. You just have to think a little bit differently on how you stack and such. And it is a glass build as well, so you kind of have to play it to those strengths. Or usually I make it a glass build, I should say. But same, for instance, always with Ongoing. I've always enjoyed Ongoing and Redify, for instance, as buffing builds. But then again as well, those are kind of on meta, basically, because definitely for Countdown or such, a Redify is very much a meta build, I would say. Although in a group setting, again, you would have multiple strikers and then having an Ongoing or a Redify to buff them. And yeah, so yeah, it's kind of dependent. But yeah, if I have to pick one, and if we just go off meta as being, not weapon damage, not being a red build, or DPS as a DPS build, as most people say, I usually say red build. I would definitely say, for me, Fire Eclipse. That's also the reason it was the very first kind of video. It wasn't even a build showcase; it was a build masterclass. Was about FI or Fire Eclipse. So yeah, that very much is for me my but also, yeah, this is my go-to build. Kind of, I quite often will just jump on the Eclipse, and usually people don't seem to mind as much. They'll go like, "Yay, that'll make it super easy." So I've also been pushed into that role quite often by by friends of just like, "Hey, can you come help us and be Eclipse, and we'll run a bunch of missions." So I think that's kind of my answer. But I enjoy a lot of builds. More than anything, actually, what I enjoy is variety. So I will likely jump off of a build after a while. Because as well, I could list a dozen others like combat medics, especially, for instance, as another notable one. I very much enjoy a negotiator as well, but that's kind of like a meta red build, but it's just off strikers, basically. I kind of like Umbra as well, just for its mechanics, but you can't get the damage out of it that you can out of Negotiator or Strikers, but getting the most out of itself is kind of fun. So yeah, a lot of it's kind of difficult to go with one, and also kind of depends on meta as the definition. But yeah, maybe you have an answer in there somewhere. You can make your own answer out of that one. And yeah, to continue on, one of the community questions was, as I'll read it out here, this may be old weather, but I can't get into the room in Judiciary Square. It's the NYC After Dark building. I can't figure that profanity out. Appreciate any help. Well, even though it's not completely like related, but we'll answer it here as we are right in front of it. This is the door that leads here. There are actually a few of these doors that are only accessible. There used to be actually 2. I think this is actually nowadays the last remaining one. That is only accessible during the when you have the side mission or are doing the side mission. There used to also be the Odeya office buildings here, where you could have this keychest, which of course the reason why they want to get into this room, like most likely, is they want to get the backfire part or just the keychest for resources. Yeah, this room also only used to be available during the side mission. They fixed that one. They did not fix this one, which also contains a hyena chest, as it is in there-ish. It is up there. But yeah, there's no way of getting into it, and hopefully they will fix that. Yeah, let's move on to another one, as we've gone through the community post ones. But I reached out to a few people and went like, "Hey, I'm gonna do a Q&A thing. I might not get a lot of questions. Do you have any questions? Ask me any 3 that you want." some people asked me silly things that they knew I wasn't going to answer anyway because they were in jokes or something. But actually, we'll go through a few fun ones. Also, I'll be doing a few that I just frequently get, and we'll just answer them and go from there. So first one is, what do I do for a living? As as they continue on, basically, well, I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not going to read out the entire thing as it is just worded as like between friends, but it's basically because you seem to have a lot of time, but then not in such a friendly manner. And that is, I work actually as a technician. I work as a stage technician, which means I do lighting or audio or other things as required for a stage to work, basically. I worked for several venues in the past. I mostly now work for just one venue or one organization that has two venues. That is kind of my day job. I also am a photographer, so actually I do some photography professionally as well as just portraiture or commercial work for especially companies and such, just headshots for on their sites and such. Yeah, that has always been kind of the things that I did. I actually started very young with being around stages, as I'm not educated in that field. Actually, I'm not educated in really any field, as I'm in American terms, I'm basically a high school dropout. Even though in like Dutch terms, I do have a high school diploma, just because I reached a certain amount of years in high school at a higher level, so I got the diploma of a lower level. But I basically started working for stage work and such pretty young. Although actually first in retail actually for a few years, and then somewhat transitioned into that. And yeah, that has been my occupation, and I've kind of always been in that field. Funnily enough, I'm not much one for entertainment. I'm also not a musician or such myself. I'm very much more from the visual side of things. That's also why I mostly actually do lighting. Although from a technical standpoint, I know audio better than most audio technicians almost, especially the gear itself and such. So I can make it work and get well enough results out of it. But I especially like the video or like the lighting side of things, as I grew up mostly watching film and such, and I was always interested in lighting and lights. And while it may not seem here as a very simple setup, of course, for my headshot here with a very simple lighting. Yeah, doing lighting and just trying to set a mood with lights and stuff has always fascinated me. So, and with a background from movies and such, where and photography as well, where lighting is all that matters really for photography. You're not capturing the person really, you're capturing the light, and then you're trying to, make sure that the person is happy enough that they give you a good sight. Yeah, and that's kind of always been my shtick. So, and I've basically stuck into it. And at this point as well, later on in it, because most of the work in that space is always contingent on usually having a diploma or such, because they trust that, if you have a, but eventually I basically had enough experience in the field that nowadays I can basically go, I've 15 years of experience in the field and can go like, yeah, just ask me 3 questions, see how I answer them, and then you move on. That's usually how it works with technicians. They go like, oh, okay, so, if you have this mixing desk, how do you load a setting or something, like stuff like that? And if you can answer that, then they know like, oh, okay, they can trust you well now. Even more of my history as somebody, while paraphrasing it, basically, what is my gaming history is basically what they're asking. They're asking it a little bit more in depth, as the person they're asking it has been with me with a few games. They're asking basically, hey, I remember you from this game. What games did you play before it, or such stuff like that? Well, if we're gonna start somewhere, my very first game likely is NAS. That's or my own game, because likely I played somebody else's. But the first console I remember owning myself was my mom getting me an NES for my birthday with Super Mario, and me being glued to a TV for way too long. to the point of exhaustion sometimes, and very much enjoying that. And basically moving through, Nintendo sides of things. I never had actually the Sega gear until much later, actually, as in my mid-20s, I was very much into getting a little bit into retro gaming, as a lot of people did back then. And I did go actually and grab a Master System and a Game Gear and things like that. But yeah, went basically NES with just a few games. I remember having DuckTales. I remember having Mario. I remember having one of the Final Fantasies, and that being really one of the games that kind of stuck with me. Then moving SNES, PlayStation. And the PlayStation was really the time that I really got into gaming, even more so. And PlayStation 2, and then Xbox as well. And Xbox was really my first entree into, as Xbox, of course. When it came out, it didn't have Xbox Live. Later on, it did. And it came with even a demo of MotoGP, a game that I really had no interest in, but it was kind of like the free game that you could play a lot of on Xbox Live starting out. And I remember kind of my first experiences with online being with that, because I didn't have a PC before that. So a lot of people, of course, experienced it on PCs with LAN parties and stuff before that. But yeah, for me, it was very much Xbox Live, and that kind of, I always enjoyed that as well, kind of catching up to people and kind of talking about things. And I very much remember as well being very much into a Rainbow Six. I think that was on the original Xbox, Rainbow Six 3. Yeah, because Vegas and such were 360, of course. But yeah, that was my game that I really played a lot. And of course, that kind of got me into the milsim space, even though it wasn't the milsim, of course, but the kind of military style games. And I always enjoyed that one. So moving on, I went into a lot of as well. I've played most of the Tom Clancy universe things. That's also kind of how I got into Division. But yeah, from there it went 360, and then in the late times of the 360, I did always have a computer, but never a good one. And then really at the end of the 360, I started really to get into PC gaming, and we went on from there. Although even before that, I did get into some PC gaming, although a little bit like older games. Star Wars Galaxies was very much also a formative game for me. And that came out actually, that was around when that 360 was out as well, I think. And then I went a lot of MMOs. I played most of them way too much, although none of them as much as just Division 2, really, actually. But yeah, WoW, EVE, several others as well, and eventually landing on a little game, Division 1, although I joined Division 1 way late, like it was basically the last year of it, although it was basically out, of course, for 2 years or 2.5 years before Division 2 came out. So kind of caught the tail end of it, and that really made me excited for Division 2, and jumped in a few months in, actually, because I usually don't jump in on the first day with many games. Even with Division, I jumped in a little bit on the first week, but it was a little bit unstable, actually, the servers back then. And I kind of just left it for a few months, which I usually do with games, and then jumped in and never looked back, as the last few years have been very much Division. So yeah, let's move on after that long ramble. And as we move on, first, somebody asked me, and this has been asked quite a few times, so I'm just paraphrasing multiple questions. That's also two people kind of came up with it, and it's basically what is my background in maths, or why am I known as the maths guy, kind of thing. As that's kind of how that other person asked it, and the answer actually there is I have no background in mathematics. I have a background, especially with my profession, as we laid out there. Of figuring stuff out, because that's usually what that profession kind of is looking up, going through manuals and looking up, how does this specific piece of gear work, and how can I make this specific gear work with that lighting console? How can I make this specific how do I specifically hook up this compressor into this digital desk, stuff like that. How do I use this plugin in a laptop with a DAC with a digital desk, stuff like that. And that kind of figuring out, I feel I've always been good with. I'm very much a person that even at a young age, my father was an electrical engineer, and truly an engineer. He really introduced me to taking stuff apart and just looking at how they work. And I've done that way too long in my life. And because of that, I very much enjoy usually figuring out how stuff works. With most of the things, I want to have a basic understanding of how they work, including like all the equipment that I even personally use. I want to know how a DSLR works. I want to know how a mouse works, how keyboards works, and stuff like that. At a not like high level, but a fundamental level. And that has always been my thing. And I've taken that into gaming as well. And once you get into gaming, maths kind of shows its face. You can't really go around maths at that point. And because of that, I've slowly gotten better at maths. But I'm also, as anybody who's seen me on stream, I quite often struggle with it. But persistence usually wins. I keep bashing my head against that wall till the wall breaks. So that has been my way of learning simple mathematics, because in the end, most of the things in Division or most video games is just simple arithmetics, meaning that it's just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Yeah, because of that, it's not that hard. You're not solving for X in algebra or something, or doing weird, calculus stuff. It is always pretty basic. It is usually a lot of steps. That's usually what gets you. It's sometimes with some video games, it's like 3 dozen steps before you get a final number out, where they have dozens of buffs. But especially with Division, of course, usually you basically have a base number, you add 6 or 7 multipliers, and you get a final output. And one of the nice things, especially with Division, and why I kind of feel that in Division especially, it is very core to the game, even though, for instance, in other games like WoW or Eve, this kind of stuff gets done as well. But there, at the final step, there's also a random value. So there's a plus minus percentage random that kind of gets added on top. So, for instance, specifically, World of Tanks, as a famous example, has a plus minus 25% on the shot, because there's a very simple thing. It gives you the number, and then it has an optimal range kind of effect. And then if it hits, it does plus or minus 25%. In Division, it is a flat number every time. Your crits are all the same crits as long as you're hitting the same target until their armor runs out, and then you're hitting DTH, and now it's a new number. So it's very easy, actually, to go through it like that. And I very much enjoyed that, and I just basically kept bashing my head against it. And for instance, as well, the damage calculators that I've made and such, they're basically iterations on it. I've just started somewhere, and just over time, others as well have helped me, just going like, hey, this thing that you've done is maybe not the right way. And I go like, okay, what's the right way? And usually we help each other to figure it out. And yeah, I don't have a background in mathematics, so if I can do it, I feel everybody can. And likely somebody with a background in mathematics will look at some of my calculators and go, why does this person have 1 billion brackets? And that's just to visualize it for myself, for instance, as I bracket everything, for instance, in my calculators where it's completely unnecessary. But yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, I would very much say if I can learn it, anybody can. Although, of course, I've learned it over at this point, decades, basically. And it just takes some time. And if you just, one of the things as well with it is just doing it. Because I feel a lot of people kind of like know the damage calculations. I see this especially as well with the skill damage calculations, as a lot of people know it. But for instance, especially with the skill damage calculations, as long as you have a brand bonuses going into it, it doesn't actually line up, and there is some oddity going there. Although actually maybe in this new patch it isn't. And because of that, I know basically everybody that bringing that up, that they actually don't, that weirdness isn't accounted for. And same with the damage calculation. A lot of people know it, but just do it a few times. Do it for a few builds, and you'll start getting a grasp for it. Do it even without using other people's damage calculators, and just go from start and try to match up to the number you're getting in game. It'll feel good. It'll be a dopamine hit, and you'll learn a lot along the way. And then also you can start altering numbers and trying out basically builds how they would be even before trying them out. So yeah, that's kind of the background there. And yeah, actually as well, we're going into my thoughts on the new patch, basically paraphrasing, as it's a much longer question. But I feel, or actually, am I happy with the new patch is basically what they're asking. And I very much am, actually. I was very much, I've already said it on stream several times, when they said they were going to rebalance weapons, I went like, what? You're going to, this team is going to rebalance weapons? Because we've recently gotten the Elmo, the Oreo, the Iron Lung. All three are, let's say, pretty powerful, especially the Ouroboros is very powerful. It is very much kind of too powerful. And I was kind of concerned that power creep was going to be horrendous with the weapon changes, especially in ARs. I feel they did a pretty good job. They've missed a few. I feel they need to bring up a few remaining ones. M4, Carbine, and SIG, namely, especially. The 20% all around on LMGs is kind of lazy. But in the end result of it, I'm actually pretty happy with it. It turned out pretty fine. We have some new contenders in all of the categories, and yeah, that kind of, and all round as well. It is pretty fine, because also Ouroboros already kind of set the cap, and nothing is passing that cap. And yeah, them turning back on behind you as it was in PTS2, although they've given the reasoning as well, and the reasoning does seem coherent. So yeah, overall, I'm actually pretty happy with the patch, and also a lot of minor changes have been made, and a lot of things that I never would think that they would actually fix, like swap speed being fixed now, is actually, yeah, kind of every time made me happy. Or even Warhounds going up ropes now, for those that haven't gotten to that yet. But there's a lot of minor things like that, and also a lot of simple out of bounds have been fixed, for instance. And actually that leads us into the next 3 questions. Actually, I'll make it 4 basically. And that is, they're basically asking me what is in every weapon class, as they've asked, what are the 3 best ARs. We'll basically go into each of the categories. So starting with ARs, not the top 3, but I would say the top tier ones is definitely, to me, now the F2000, the FAMAS. They're the high-end top contenders. FAMAS still competes as well in there, especially because a lot of people will have some already, and it still will out DPS on burst and F2000 on a striker build, although of course it loses out on sustain, but it is actually still a lot more accurate as well than F2000. Then on the exotic side, actually the Elmo and the Eagle Bearer both actually are really good contenders, especially Eagle Bearer solo. I feel a lot of people are discounting the Eagle Bearer. Actually, in solo, I would definitely say tenacity, you can definitely make it work. But Elmo is also so easy to use that, yeah, it's up there. If we're going then like 1 tier below it, I would definitely put also a notable one of the AKs in there, the military in the black market AKs on ARs, together with G36 and ACRE. Those are really good now, especially, of course, them having long rails. And also on exotic end, Bighorn goes there, but also the capacitor kind of goes in there as well. And also the Chameleon with DTOC, both of them as well, because they're all 3 of those actually, the Bighorn as well, having Eagle Bear as well. All of them having the ability now to get DTOC on them, while costly, is actually pretty good. So well worth considering. SMG-wise, Banshee and MP7 are the big winners, high-end. On the exotic side, Chatterbox actually getting detox now is very powerful for it. So that jumped it up a lot. Backfire as well got a little bit better, but Backfire still needs its talent to be something different, something that doesn't fall away after 10 seconds. But with detox, instead of the magazine size, it's doing a lot better than it used to the point that, yeah, I would consider it maybe for just an off-meta build, just something different build that kind of forces you to play with its mechanics. Moving on to LMGs, yeah, the LMGs, of course, all went up by 20%. So especially to me, the RPK and the Infantry MG5 are the clear standouts in that class, always have been. And together with that, I would say the Good Times is very much in there, and also L86 with fast hands. But especially with L86, I really needed to be fast hands for me to even consider it. With RPK as well, actually. Infantry MG5 as well, actually. And then, of course, Good Times is fast hands as well, actually. You can go steady-handed with some of the other weapons, especially the GR9 with the rate of fire mag. Does compete decently well. But you can also go a 150 mag on a M60, E4, or E6, and also get steady-handed, because you have 150 rounds to make steady-handed happen. And what steady-handed basically will do is turn the burst into sustain. While the burst is low, it is basically that as a sustain as well. But there isn't much content where you can definitely make that work, because we don't fight that big of an enemy outside of a raid and such. But the LMGs are very, very competitive now, ahead of ARs for most content. Their only downside being, of course, their suppression mechanics, but you can kind of negate that. And I kind of want to play around with it more, especially in group settings where we have like a foam eclipse or a fire eclipse alongside, and kind of try to get the most more out of LMGs, because, yeah, 5% more is definitely nothing to scoff at. Then we go to MMRs, where a big shakeup happens, of course. And the White Death is, to me, very much no longer a choice. I've started replacing it with two different weapons. The Model 700. So the Model 700 is not the M700 Carbon or the M700 Tactical. Those are different Model 700s. But the base Model 700 with the integral magazine, that one is the hardest hitting MMR now, especially if you're, like most, running determined on it. It is the go-to. On a Habsburg with grade 25, it can even, depending on if you have the hot shot as well, you can usually start on an elite. So that is pretty powerful. But there's also another contender, and that is the SR1. The SR1 is basically doing the same damage as the White Death did on this first shot, and has a higher cap, because, of course, the reason the White Death kind of did the same as it is that it had that extra headshot. But the SR1, so it's the SR1, not the SRSA1, which is also a variant, just for confusion's sake. But yeah, the SR1 with 2 stability mods has no sway. I don't mean little sway, I mean no sway. So going from a White Death to that is, to me, a very big upgrade. So if you put those 2 stability mods on there, you can also have a 10-round mag on it. Still the same scopes are available on it. And have no sway and do the same damage as a White Death. Which is kind of sad for the White Death, of course, because most of us will have an expertise graded White Death. If you do, there's also a case to be made that the White Death already did what it needed to do. If you don't need the extra damage or aren't min-maxing, a White Death is still perfectly fine. Because it didn't receive any, it didn't get a nerf, basically. It's doing still what it always did, so there's always that. So yeah, let's move on to some of the last ones. And for a few final ones, first off, as somebody asked me, how many hours do I have played in the game, as we have a whole firefight happening there, of course. One thing you can do, if you didn't know, you can actually, if you type it correctly, inspect yourself. Don't do it too often, you'll go blind, as you know, as all parents have warned us, if you inspect yourself too much, you'll go blind. I'm actually gonna go into a Google thing and start with a calculator, as once you're inspecting someone as well, as I have brought up there, you can have their playtimes as well in that second one. This would also show their clan if there was one. I'm gonna put 3169, nice, plus 2301 from my second character on this account, 1754 as my third character, and an 1176. And that equals 8,406 hours. We left the minutes out, so likely another hour. We've left out as well characters that I've deleted because, for instance, I used to have a conflict character at 100, and that was my PvP character. I deleted that at some points, sadly, by bad choices. But also, what we have then, as we, of course, that is this 20K-er. If I inspect I_Kia, we will see that I inspect I_Kia. There we go. As I mistyped it there. This is my second account. I have on this another plus 1645. Also, there is this character on it with 115 hours. This is a World Tier 5 characters that I quite enjoy playing around on World Tier 5. We'll add that one in as well, plus 115. That is... actually, I made a mistake there. We can go back in time. As I instead, of course, as I was thinking of the division, I actually divided. That is not the thing to do, of course. Plus and then plus 115. That is a cool 10K 166. I've played this game a lot. That's not the end of it, sadly. Though we'll go to inspect no_Kia_, which is my third account. And they are at this point 1K or 1K 128, 1128, for a playtime of another plus 243. And we reach 10K 409. That is a lot of hours. Am I proud of that? I kind of am. I played this game a lot. I enjoyed my time with it a lot as well. I basically reached that 10K point, right, where they say if you do something for 10K hours, you can have some mastery in it. Maybe some truth to that. Maybe I don't feel I've completely mastered Division 2, especially, of course, not on like the playing side of things. Much more so on the understanding side of things. I feel I'm at a good point with the game. And that leads us actually into the next question, which is kind of paraphrased as we're just shortening it a little bit. And that is, how do I still, why do I still play the Division 2, and how do I make it still appealing to me? And that comes down a lot to me, I feel, with playstyle. I like playing a lot of different things, and especially Division now at this point has a lot of different game modes. While some of them aren't meaningfully different, so for instance, Summit or Countdown is basically more of the game. Same for missions, same for open world. They are still different enough that I quite enjoy it. To just, I can play Summit one day, I can play open world another day, do some random matchmaking with some missions the third day, and go descending, for instance, which is somewhat different, or incursions, or raids, which are completely different kind of than the other kind of gameplay, where it's much more coordinated, or for instance, for incursions and raids, or descent, which is just a different kind of play style. And I feel if you just kind of hop around with that already, you can make a lot of extra fun for yourself. Same as well as with what, like for instance, the build collection shows, I do enjoy playing a lot of different builds, and that's also part of it. If I was only playing red builds, which I used to, for instance, I used to be very much a glass red, and only glass reds mattered to me back then. Only damage ever. If I was still that, I don't think I would have kept for this long. But also even as an Eclipse, I enjoy playing Eclipse for a few hours, especially if I haven't for a while, and just kind of going by autopilot almost for me for Eclipse, as I've especially in missions. But then, playing Combat Medic the next second, playing a Pesty for the next, grabbing and going in countdowns, grabbing ongoing directives, grabbing red FIs, grabbing foam, hazard protected foams for countdown, going foam eclipse for legendary, going strikers for incursion or a healer for incursion. There's so much if you are willing to, play around with classes, with content. There is a lot of content, and I feel a lot of people leave that out. People go, I don't want a countdown because it's boring. I don't want a summit because it has no windows. I don't want to play the incursion because I don't have friends. Raiding is out of the question then as well. I just want to open world. I don't even do missions, matchmate or anything. Because I feel that as well. Matchmaking missions is one of my things that I enjoy a lot. It doesn't always go well. Sometimes you get horrendous teams. But overall, it brings enough randomness. And that's kind of the thing that I enjoy, just variety. And that's kind of as well in my real life, kind of what I enjoy a lot. It's kind of how my professions as well, for instance, line up as I'm, doing lights one day, sound the other day, and doing photography the other day. If I were to be pigeonholed into one exact thing, I don't think I would hold out there as long as well either. So yeah, just variety is the spice of life, and you just need to spice it up sometimes. Go out of your comfort zone if you're just farming open world. Go do some matchmake missions. Try to find an incursion team. Try to get into a clan and maybe go on raids or even just random groups. Just there's a lot of fruit, and keep eating from the same tree. After a time, it just gets boring, and I can totally get that. And that's how mainly as well kind of kept myself from burning out. Also, I've never really gone all in on, for instance, level farming or such. I have done quite a bit of convoy farming in the past, especially with a group but even then, it was with a group that I enjoyed playing with. I wasn't doing it for the convoy farming. I enjoyed playing with that group. We were basically speed running it as best as we could, and we were coming up with strategies and stuff like that. If I were to do that solo, I don't think I would have the dedication to stick around for it. So yeah, the game is in-depth enough for it to matter that way. And we're gonna end up on the last question, as we've rambled on for quite a bit. I hope. Although, of course, if there's one video I'm going to ramble on, it's answering questions randomly, of course. And that is, what was the significance of February 10th, as that is when this is recorded, as I brought it up a bit, and why February 11th as well. And that is that, on February 10th, as I said at the start, indeed, of course, it's my birthday. And that was also kind of the impetus to make the YouTube channel, as I was sitting around last year on my birthday in the afternoons before heading off in the evening to do some stuff with my friends. And I was often asked to make videos or tutorials, or actually written guides as well, quite often, about how to play things, as through the years I have actually helped a lot of clanmates and such improve on their eclipsing. Especially people knew kind of that I was okay at eclipsing, so when they saw me and they were interested in it, they would go like, hey, we're on cons, hey, I'll go like, hey, you eclipse, I'll give you some tips, like where they spawn, where they go, how to ignite, where to place yourself, kind of stuff like that. And people were always kind of like pushing me towards like, just make some video content. And I took the plunge on that day. I was thinking of just, I'll give it as a birthday present to myself, and it kind of worked out. I feel, well, of course, I don't have a billion subscribers or stuff like that, or the humongous, all the guns, bitches, and bling and stuff. But that's also, of course, not what I was going for. I always knew as well that it's going to be a niche thing, because I'm making hour-long content on a game that, while still very active, isn't as active as some of the bigger games. And I was always going to be fine with that. So I'm also very happy with how far the channel has come. But yeah, that was the impetus to start it there. There were some other videos on the channel beforehand, some minor things, but I consider the the Fire Eclipse Masterclass to be the real first like actual real video. And yeah, from there, of course, I went on and did some other stuffs and things and build showcases and a lot of rambling talks, including this one. And yeah, I very much enjoyed my time there. And of course, streaming now as well, and doing that regularly as is allowed, basically by my by my work. As sometimes I do need to work the evenings. And yeah, that was a great choice, I feel. And that's also the masterclass, of course. I recorded it on the 10th. I actually recorded parts of it on the 11th as well, because it was a long thing and took me a little bit, as that one was 2 hours something. And yeah, I put it up on February 11th, and that's very much the significance of those days. And that's also why I kind of lined it up here as well, for me to have the 20K on the February 10th, just to have a memory there of, you know, I will always remember when I hit my 20K. Yeah. Your own birthday is kind of hard to forget. It's on a lot of places. And yeah, I very much enjoyed my journey here, and I'm hoping to have the journey go on for a lot longer as well. And yeah, we're gonna round it out there, as I've rambled on for quite a while. I hope you kind of enjoyed it, watching it, and you all out there had some fun with some of the answers. We will likely do this at some point again in the future, maybe less than a year away, instead of next year, maybe in like 6 months' time. Maybe whenever I hit 25K or something, as we'll use that as a milestone. Or if I hit a milestone with subscribers, we'll pick something. And yeah, as always, if you enjoyed my content, if you are willing to help out the channel, doing all the algorithm stuffs, you guys know what they are. I don't need to say it out loud, right? And of course, as well, joining me for streams, and both on YouTube and Twitch, as I stream on both of them. And yeah, I hope you join me for all the future videos. And thank you as well for joining me for all of the past videos. And as always, have a good night.